Hey, what's up guys? The Explanation Pro is here. Today, I'll explain a horror thriller movie, Cupid. Spoilers incoming! The movie begins with a story about Cupid and his life. Cupid, a son of two Roman gods, fell in love with Psyche, goddess of the soul, who is beautiful inside and out. However, Venus, Cupid's mother, grows bitter and jealous of her, so she bars Cupid from ever seeing Psyche. But true love couldn't hold Psyche back, as she begs for Venus's approval. Venus finally agrees, however, with a condition that Psyche completes 3 impossible tasks. Venus, confident that Psyche will fail, is taken aback when she returns alive and successful. Before she could enter the castle, Psyche falls with a gift she was tasked to fetch. Cupid, desperate to save Psyche, pricks her with one of the arrowheads thinking that the ambrosia it holds will help her. But Venus had tampered with it and laced it with poison which ensured Psyche's death. Cupid, fueled with rage towards his jealous mother and unsupportive father, began to ravage the town, promising that he'll never support or allow love again. If he can't have it, no one else will. In his anger, Cupid goes to the underworld and faces Pluto, the Roman god of death. Furious that Cupid has the gall to demand help for his revenge, Pluto decides to warp Cupid's mind and fill it with darkest anger that Cupid could never be rid of, as well as demonic energy flowing through his blood. Under the right circumstances, Cupid can also be summoned to defend and protect what he represents, bringing fury to those who abused it. We're brought back to the present. Valentine's Day. During a date, Carl is bragging to his date about his career and his money. She seems doubtful, asking him if he's totally successful. He answers that it depends on what you class as success. He goes on and on about his supposed success and wealth that his date excuses herself to go to the washroom. As she's gone, he glances down to his phone and sees that he has 12 missed calls from Sandy. Out of nowhere, a woman bangs on the side of the door to call for his attention. Sandy sits at the table across the guy who turns out to be her dad. She looks so heartbroken as he tells her off for disturbing his important business meeting. She apologizes to him and he brushes her off. She's unable to explain herself clearly, but tells him that everyone's gone and that he killed them all. Carl drags her outside, thinking she's on drugs. He turns her around only to run into his date from earlier. As he's introducing Sandy to her, an arrow hits her squarely in the right eye, blood splashing on both Sandy and Carl. Looking up, Carl finds a body flying just above them. Sandy tells him that they need to go, so she grabs him and starts running. They're in the middle of the field with flying figure who seems to be Cupid. Close behind, Carl asks Sandy what's going on, and she tells him that she summoned it after what he did to her mom. He asks her where her mother is and admits that she's gone. Cupid finally lands and quickly hits Carl on his left thigh with an arrow. Sandy begs him not to do this and that she didn't want what was happening. Cupid grabs Sandy by her hair and forces her head through the arrow that's still sticking out of Carl's thigh. He then grabs Carl by the head and pulls out his heart. Duncan, a teacher, goes to the bathroom where Faye is trying to get gum out of her hair. Elise spies on the two of them as Duncan tells Faye that if it was Elise and her friends, she'll need to tell him so that he can help her. But Faye tells him that she's honestly fine and thank him for trying to help. As he leaves, he runs into Elise and threatens to pull the plug on the school dance if she doesn't leave Faye alone. She counters that she can lie about him finding her naked in the girl's toilet and getting him fired for it. Elise steals Duncan's phone, asking her friends if anyone knew of Faye's number, since it's quite known that huge crush Faye has on Duncan. On the other table, Matt and Faye are talking about the possibility that her spells are working, and Duncan's falling for her. Matt tells her to be real. At home, Faye realizes that she has a series of texts from Duncan. They make plans for Faye to stay late and make a move, then which she agrees to. Duncan then asks if she could send a photo. She sends a selfie first, then sends just herself in her bra. We find Elise and her friends laughing hysterically at Faye's photo and shouting insults. Lena asks her what she'll do with the picture, and Elise tells her to wait and see. As Elise and her friends talk about what would go down that evening, Helen calls for her attention. She tells her to leave Faye alone or else the Valentine's Day ball they've been planning would get shut down. This angers Elise more and she tells her to stay out of it. Helen smiles and tells her that she's only trying to help her before leaving. Lena and Britt tell Elise to leave it, but Elise is more determined to do it now. Faye goes to visit Duncan, who's working on his paper. As they're talking, Faye goes to kiss Duncan, who's surprised. Elise and her friends are recording the whole thing. During English class, Britt plays the video of Faye kissing Duncan. Freaking out, Faye runs but Elise trips her. When Faye gets to the hallway, her semi-nude photos are taped all over the wall. Elise and her friends walk out laughing and insulting Faye further. In her anger, Faye slaps Elise and they start fighting. Helen walks out of her class in time to break up the fight. Duncan cancels the Valentine's Day ball as Faye breaks free from Helen's hold and runs off to the bathroom. Faye brings out her stuff and decides to go through the spell to summon Cupid, the love destroyer. The candle lights dim and Pluto appears by Faye's side, asking her why she summoned him. She answers that she wants to end love within the school. He asks her if she understands the price for calling the end of love, as well as the consequences, and she confirms. Lena's alone in the bathroom. While in one stall, she hears something scraping on the floor. In her curiosity, she looks through the gap below the bathroom stall door and sees feet standing just in front of her stall. She leans close to the bathroom stall wall to listen, and Cupid releases an arrow next to her. It pierces through the wall and her head, and she screams. Struggling to pull her head back, she tries to run but trips and he steps on her back. He tears her blouse and burns her with what appears to be a very hot heart-shaped metal cookie cutter. Elise tries to leave school, getting on Brett's, her boyfriend's car. Principal Harper catches up to them and orders Elise to get out of the car. She urges Brett to start the car and run the principal over when they notice Cupid flying. Everyone looks up at him, and Cupid shoots an arrow through Principal Harper's left eye. Elise and Brett get out of the car and starts running. Cupid hits Brett's left leg next before they enter the school. Brett asks Elise what happened, and she explains Cupid, the flying, and the shooting. She doesn't believe her, tells her it sounds ridiculous, and doesn't even know if she's in shock. Elise tries to explain further and tells them that Principal Harper's dead, which shocks Matt. Faye freaks and runs out. Matt goes after Faye and she asks him if Brett will be alright. Matt thinks she knows something but she refuses to talk. Duncan and Helen finally arrive, heading for Brett. He asks Elise to move over and they inspect Brett's leg. The blood is back and the wound looks infected. Helen wonders if it's an infection and if something was on the arrow. They turn Brett over, see the veins on his chest darkening as he coughs up blood. Duncan asks Helen to bring the kids out. As Brett coughs up more blood, Duncan finally realizes that it's poison that's affecting him. He points out that the poison is traveling to Brett's heart, already, and tells Helen that he'll die. Mrs. Simmons takes the kids back to the gymnasium as Elise argues with her. The light suddenly dims and Daryl wonders out loud what's going on. A large beating heart comes on the projector screen. Faye and Matt arrive at the gymnasium with Mrs. Simmons, Elise and her friends shaking. She calls for Mrs. Simmons but she quiets her down, and they look over to where the group's looking and find Cupid. It raises his bow, an arrow, and everyone splits. In the hallway, Cupid hits Mrs. Simmons with an arrow and she falls. Faye goes back for her and tries to help her when Cupid hits her again. Matt tells Faye off and he gets hit as well. Mrs. Simmons tells the kid to get out and Cupid heads for her. He steps on her back and stabs her on her head with the arrow that was on her back. At the school locker room, Cupid finds Brit. She screams as it hits her on the head. He tells it to get away from her. He holds onto her, shows her a bouquet of roses, which he forces through her throat, stem first. Faye tells Matt that he's infected and something must be on the arrow. Matt tells her that if he dies, he wants her to know that he was the one who sent her the Valentine's card. She asks what, and he asks her why she still doesn't get it, that he'd had a crush on her since they were in 5th grade. She tells him she had no idea, because he's kind of her little brother. They hear a sound and find Lena's body, as well as a heart-shaped cookie cutter that was used to burn her back. When they get to the science lab, Elise accuses Faye of doing everything. She's holding onto Faye's spellbook. Faye tries to deny it, but Elise tells her that she heard what Faye said to Mrs. Simmons. She finally admits it. Daryl and Elise try to leave and look for the rest of their friends. They go back to the gymnasium with beating heart, still projected on a screen. Daryl tells Elise that something's not right. They're trying to pull the arrow out of Matt's arm, and Faye tells him that when they get out, she'll take him on a date. He tries to argue, but she points out that it's the 21st century, and he tells her that he'd like that. Duncan approaches Matt with a saw. He screams, and Duncan explains that whatever's in the arrow killed Brett. Cupid's in the gymnasium with Daryl and Elise. He throws something on Daryl's back, and he falls. Elise starts slowly backing out as Cupid continues attacking Daryl. He tries to ask Elise for help, but Elise runs. Cupid steps on Daryl's back and slices his neck. Back at the science lab, Duncan counts to 3 and saw Matt's arm off to stop the poison from spreading. Duncan approaches Faye to ask him how she is, and she admits to practicing black magic because she wanted him to like her. She tells him that he only called for Cupid because she wanted Elise and her friends to stop, but didn't think that this would be the price. Duncan asks her how it will stop. She tells him that they need for the 24 hours to end. As soon as Valentine's up, they'll be released from Cupid's curse. Faye, Duncan, and Elise hears Helen screaming, and they run to where they hear her. Helen's on stage with Cupid pointing his bow and arrow at her. Faye pulls out her book and starts reading an incantation to summon Pluto. She warns the group not to look, or if they meet his eyes, their soul will be taken. Pluto asks Faye why he was summoned, and she tells him that she wants it to stop. Pluto tells her for it to stop, a sacrifice must be made. If Faye gives up her life, the curse will be lifted. If not, everyone in the room will be killed. Faye sees Cupid aiming his arrow at Duncan's head. She screams and pushes Cupid away, which startles Elise, and she looks over to Pluto. She realizes what she's done and tries to look away, but it's too late. Pluto touches her shoulder. She faces him. He holds her head and Cupid stabs his arrow to the back of her head and through her mouth. Duncan's phone starts ringing. It's midnight. They're alive. Cupid and Pluto are gone. The movie ends with Helen and Matt driving off first to the hospital as Faye and Duncan's talking. Out of the blue, Duncan goes to kiss Faye. Faye asks him what he's doing and he snaps out of it whatever trance he was in. He tells her that her love spells must have worked and that she needs to fix it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.